How many of you have children? How many have children in school? Let's take a survey. How many people in here would like to have their children be common? No? How about average? What do you think Common Core actually is? Do you think common, if you have something that's common? Remember when George Bush came along and said, no child left behind? Well, what Common Core does is the exact opposite of that. It allows no child to get ahead. It keeps everybody in a very, very tight-knit group. So that no matter where you go in the world, and I say world because this is globalization, but here in the United States, anywhere that you go, you will get the same exact education. Geographics don't matter. Regions don't matter. Cultures don't matter. Okay, you're going to get the same exact standard of education. The lesson plans might be different, but they're all going to be geared towards what is called Common Core standards. What is Common Core? That's the big question. This is two trains that have a coupling, a train coupling. And really, what it boils down to is Common Core is very much like a train coupling. It is a little piece of paper that allows total privatization and takeover of the education system, making it a for-profit industry traded on the stock market. Which is why the budget is getting huger and huger every year. All right? This is done through what's called model legislation, through best practices, and through uniform laws. And we'll explain what that means in a bit. Model legislation, when you hear the word model, that is generally coming from the Agenda 21 model legislation. There's groups like American Legislative Exchange Council, which is from the Koch brothers, where corporations and politicians get together, they get wined and dined, they all create this legislation, and then they take that legislation to Congress, back to their, after being schmoozed. And basically at that point, when you hear the term rubber stamped, basically that's what our Congress is doing at this point. That's what your local legislators are doing as well, because the legislation is being created outside of government in almost all cases. There's very few laws that are being created inside of government. They are all being created outside of government. This is the little happy face train, and I called it the United Nations Express, with the next stop being globalism. And this is kind of what we see, because we're masterfully entertained all the time. Everything. We have reality shows, we have soap operas, we have sitcoms, we have all of this entertainment, we have video games, and so the whole globalization movement looks very much like this little happy face. But remember that this is the United Nations, and it's connected to this next train, which is the United States, by a little thing called Common Core standards. And it's done through these model legislations, which is Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is sustainable development. The words Agenda 21 and sustainable development are interchangeable. They are the exact same thing. So we're talking about United Nations here. You got to understand this, folks. Can you hear me without the microphone? Yeah, I'm pretty loud. When we're talking about the United Nations, think of the United Nations as the same model as the United States. The United States, we have 50 states, although technically we have 55. We are all in a compact or contractual nature with the United States. The United States is 69 square miles outside of the actual states. It's not a state. It is a corporation, an incorporated district, and it is a municipality or a municipal corporation. And it is basically your central your central government, your central corporation, and it protects us. Whereas before we protected ourselves. So when we're talking about the United Nations, nations are called states. Okay, if you think of what that means we, as a nation, are a state of a central government, which is the United Nations. That means Zimbabwe and the United States are on equal playing fields. We have a vote each. We are like states of the Union, but the Union now is being transformed into a central global government. That is the United Nations. There's of course a lot more to that, but so I have this picture, and it's the perfect representation of what's happening with Agenda 21 of the United Nations. Now this is our train, and you see it wraps all the way around into basically, the whole landscape. And all around is a pristine, nice forest. No buildings, no nothing. Each one of these cars behind the United Nations steam train is a nation. So you have Australia, you have all the other United Kingdom nations, you have all the African nations, all the countries, in other words. And there's 192, I believe, nations under the United Nations that are members. In other words, they are states of the United Nations. The United States being a nation. Again, each one of these is connected through model legislation and uniform laws. And we'll definitely get into what that is. Has anybody seen the reserve and corridor biodiversity maps? Okay. This is a map of basically the red zones are places that will be off limits to humans. The yellow zones are buffer zones between those red zones that are highly, highly restricted. This is Agenda 21. The idea is to get all the populations into city centers. Salt Lake City is an Agenda 21 city. If you want to write this down, you can go check out the websites. There's Envision Utah, and I believe it's .org or .gov, and there is SLC Green. Now we're gonna explain what some of those happy, feely kind of words. Whenever you hear those are sustainable development. All this talk about green and sustainable. That's all Agenda 21. The idea, these little scattered, tiny little pieces are where humans will be allowed to live. And the idea behind Agenda 21 is to actually stack and pack. So you'll notice downtown Salt Lake especially, you're seeing all these high-rise buildings of apartments. You're not seeing houses, farms, for instance. Those farms that you see all along this corridor, most of Utah is federal land. So they can remove you under United Nations policies anytime they want to. They will take those farms anytime they want to. I was working on a farm in Draper and witnessed firsthand eminent domain in the most vile possible way, because they were taking piece by piece of the Fitzgerald farm out there and are basically putting on the heat to take the whole thing at this point. They will give about a third of the actual property value and call it just compensation. Then they will sell the property. They will use the property to build a parking garage and maybe some houses, and then they'll sell the frontage land and make millions in profit. That's your Draper City Council, where I live. So that's basically what's happening. Also, there's a little thing called the Constitution Free Zone. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is the United States. And this is a border around the United States. And that is a 100-mile border. And that is called the Constitution Free Zone. It's about 2/3 of the entire population. And, ironically enough, it's Washington, D.C. is in the Constitution Free Zone. The Constitution Free Zone There's about 197.4 million people, at least, this is probably an old figure, that live within 100 miles of the coastal borders. Also the Canadian border and the Mexico border, more importantly. It also extends 100 miles into Mexico, just so you know. So it's actually a 200-mile border. Constitution-free zone is an area within 100 miles of the U.S. land and coastal borders. Airports throughout the country are also considered Constitution-free zones. So our Salt Lake City Airport, nowhere near the coast or border, is also a Constitution-free zone. The Department of Homeland Security has the authority to stop, search, and detain anyone for any reason within a Constitution-free zone, resident or traveler.
In this presentation, you will learn how the UN's Agenda 21, or Sustainable Development, affects property ownership. You will also find sources for additional information. As Americans, our property rights matter. Land, buildings, and material goods are the means by which we live. Without rights over our property, we have no rights over our very means of survival, and therefore we are no longer free. Our founding fathers knew this and declared our rights unalienable, meaning no person could ever take them away. So critical are property rights that our Constitution protects them in the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Individual rights and freedoms are two elements that make America exceptional. Not all nations think that way. Sustainable development was coined in a 1987 report to the UN called Our Common Future. It is defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This sounds fine, until you read the report. It states, poverty is a major cause and effect of global environmental problems. It then blames nations like the United States for consuming too much and having too much wealth, much of it in the form of private property. The report concludes the only way to make the future sustainable is to reduce America's living standards and transfer our wealth to developing nations. The radical ideas promoted in Our Common Future were codified as Agenda 21 at the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development known as the Rio Earth Summit. 18,000 people from around the world attended. Agenda 21, according to the UN literature, is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the UN system in every area in which human beings impact the environment. More than 178 nations adopted Agenda 21, including George H.W. Bush for the United States. Although Congress never approved the program, President Clinton established by executive order the President's Council on Sustainable Development, whose stated purpose was to implement Agenda 21 in the United States. The President's Council on Sustainable Development operated through 1999, but its actions are now embedded in every federal agency and influence state and local communities across the United States. President Obama's Executive Order 13575 created the White House Rural Council, which further authorized every federal agency to oversee all food, fiber, and energy needs for all rural sustainable communities in America. The UN groups use the terms Sustainable Development and Agenda 21 interchangeably. Most people never heard of Agenda 21, and here's why. J. Gary Lawrence is a world leader in smart growth. He served as advisor to the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Writing for the Millennium Papers, a strategic planning publication for Agenda 21, Lawrence said, participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many who would actively work to defeat any elected official undertaking local Agenda 21. So we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. And they have. Agenda 21 uses warm and fuzzy names that blanket it in environmental causes like smart growth, open spaces, and social justice, to name a few.
Smart growth, smart streets, visioning projects, consensus, very important. When Moses came down off the hill and presented the law, which was the Ten Commandments, it was the consensus of God. There was no arguing. These people are acting like gods. When you go, if there was someone here right now, they would be attacking me with fallacy. They're trying to harm my character. They would tell me I only have 3 minutes to talk, to present all this information, and they would basically say, my information is not positive. It's not touchy-feely, so get off the stage, basically. And I would be ignored. Urbanist communities, public-private partnerships, which we're going to talk a lot about, historic preservation, sustainable communities, open spaces. That map of all the red and yellow areas, which was probably 85-90% of the entire country, is open spaces. That means man not allowed there, only animals. Sustainable, walkable communities, social justice, multi-use dwellings, that's your stack 'em and pack 'em Agenda 21 housing, greenways, in other words, anything green or even recycling is part of this. High-density urban development units and buffer zones.
Regardless of the name, the intention is to remove this, called urban sprawl, and replace it with this, often whether you want it or not. Agenda 21 mandates that all states, including the United States, must resolve all environmental disputes peacefully and in accordance with the Charter of the UN, not in accordance with our own nation's laws. Our Constitution says that man's rights are inherent to his nature as a man, and as such are unalienable. This is in direct opposition to the UN Declaration, which holds that man's rights are granted by other men and therefore can be taken away by men. Sustainable Development's political agenda originates in the UN's founding documents. This is not surprising, since many of the nations represented needed a point of agreement to rally around. The UN Charter provided that. Whereas our Declaration of Independence protects our citizens and their labor, the UN Declaration grants government the authority to withhold your property for the good of the community. To implement sustainable development in the United States, unalienable rights such as the right to property must be eroded or struck down altogether. The authors of Agenda 21 said it will affect every area of all human life grouped according to 3 objectives: equity, economy, and the environment. By defining these terms vaguely, a litany of abuses in states, counties, and local communities has resulted. By rubber stamping preconceived plans, using manipulative visioning and consensus sessions to create the appearance of public buy-in, and acquiring grants from sources with questionable motives, the entire process of implementing sustainable development policies is suspect.
So in other words, you'll see meetings happening. Like I said, they'll wish to reach a consensus. For instance, there's a consensus, in case you didn't hear, about global warming. There's a few scientists that have been paid a lot of money to say that global warming is a man-made condition. This is a very important part of Agenda 21 because we have to be the cause of something before we can be controlled. For instance, like horses and cattle are being killed and sterilized because they're supposedly ruining the lands of Montana and Wyoming. Okay, so they're sterilizing 90% of the horses, the wild horse population, and they're rounding them up and putting them in corrals. Does that sound familiar? That's the idea of Agenda 21, is to have open spaces. Okay, so we're no different than cattle, really, to these folks. When they have a meeting and they call the public, again, they're going to limit your time to speak. They're going to use what's called the Delphi technique, something you can maybe write down and actually look up yourself. It's actually a very interesting thing, and you'll see why every time, if you've ever gone to a council meeting, you can't get anything out. Because, I mean, you'll see videos of people being arrested just because they want to talk. And that's our so-called democracy. So to develop and to obtain a consensus of the public, they will have a meeting that it's almost a moot point because nothing in the meeting is really going to be considered. The plan is already there. The master plan of the community is already changed and will reflect whatever's going to happen in 10 years. The plan is already there. The meetings, the only reason they have people come and speak at meetings, like people like me, is simply to legitimize what they're doing. They have to do it by law. They have to let you know what they're doing and garner your consent. That is the important part about these public meetings.
Social equity means using the law to restructure American life. The authors of Sustainable Development knew their objectives would clash with those of the average U.S. citizen. Therefore, to achieve their objectives, they called for a shift in attitudes. The premise of Sustainable Development is that individual human wants, needs, and desires must conform to the views and dictates of the planners. Harvey Rubin, executive member of ICLEI, has said that individual rights will have to take a back seat to the collective in the process of implementing sustainable development. The next E is economy. Remember, Agenda 21's core purpose is the international redistribution of wealth and the creation of public-private partnerships. Maurice Strong, at his opening speech at Agenda 21 Earth Summit in 1992, said, "Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, home and work air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable." According to Agenda 21's preamble, the developmental and environmental objectives of Agenda 21 will require a substantial flow of new and additional financial resources to developing countries. This declaration mandates, if the conditions of the poor are to be improved, wealth must be taken from the rich, in this case, U.S. property owners. Sustainable development planners use conservation easements, eminent domain, reauthoring of master community plans, enhanced regulations, and millions of dollars in grant money to acquire private property as the means to redistribute wealth both in theory and practice. This is effectively lowering the U.S. standard of living to that of the rest of the world. Agenda 21 states that equity will be achieved through implementation of the international economic order and through transfers of resources to developing countries. In addition to its appeal for international redistribution of wealth, sustainable development restructures the economy by replacing our free enterprise system with public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships provide lucrative contracts for those companies partnering with the government and non-governmental agencies, while non-partnered companies struggle to survive against their subsidies, regulations, tax breaks, and insider privileges. With it goes the free market system.
So how many people are familiar with the NSA Center that just got built? Do you know there's a massive, massive spy center built right in your backyard? It's actually in my backyard, about 10, 15 miles up the road. Well, with a public-private partnership, so now you have the NSA, which is the federal government. But what people might not notice is that they're also Microsoft, Adobe, Apple, and many other corporations, private corporations that do all of the internet and telephone system are also moving to Utah. So what's happening is that Utah is giving exactly what this just said: tax breaks, limited liability status, easy federal access, monopolies, subsidies, and large contracts. So anyone else trying to compete will have to go through the old system, which is paying taxes and everything else. A good example is General Electric. In 2010, General Electric, this massive international corporation, paid 0 taxes. Why is that? Well, the CEO of General Electric became the jobs czar for President Obama. The other thing about that, which I'm not going to go into today, but you can go to my websites and learn about the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and the investment structure of government. Government is the main shareholder in just about every corporation in the world, through the pension system and through massive, massive investment holdings. A good way to look at it is to look at the pension system. Pensions last year, taxpayers alone, not the employees, taxpayers paid into the federal pension system almost, I think it was $980 billion, almost $1 trillion of taxpayer money goes into the pension system. All of that money is used in the form of investments into stock, foreign corporations, foreign currency, real estate, exactly what he's talking about. So for the last, since 1946, since this investment scheme really got started, government has just been continually purchasing everything on Earth. And My website, if you really want to learn about that, because that'll change your whole perspective, my website is thecorporationnation.com. You can watch my films there. Again, I'm not selling anything. These are free. It's my research, nothing else. And the first movie was called The Corporation Nation. The second movie was called The Great Pension Fund Hoax, where you can see for yourself all of the ownership in these corporations. So it's naturally an incentive for government to give tax breaks to corporations that it owns stock in, because it's then going to get gains. It's a natural conclusion in this conflict of interest that government is going to promote, say, things like vaccines and genetically modified foods, because government is the main investor, stock investor, collectively across the world in all of these pharmaceutical companies, both domestic and foreign. Monsanto, Diebold, the machines that you vote on. Government owns that corporation through stock investment. Now, of course, there's other stock investments, but take Microsoft, good example. Last time I checked, it was about 75% owned by institutional shareholders. That's the pension system, government investments, and then government is the main investor in most mutual funds out there, from Vanguard and all those big funds. Bill Gates owns 2% at the most. He is not the head of that. He does not make the decisions for that corporation. Corporations are run by what's called corporate governance. Very similar to what the United Nations is doing. All the shareholders have what's called proxy votes, and they vote for what's happening in the corporations. They vote for boards of directors. If the CEO gets out of line, the board of directors, which are put there by shareholder votes, which are mostly government institutional holders, and private ones, they'll get rid of the CEO, because they'll tell the board of directors what they want through their proxy votes. They vote on mergers and acquisitions. We're talking banks here too, by the way. Government is the main holder of stock in banks. And again, this is a collective effort throughout the world. This will make a lot more sense when we get to the Social Security system and you see how that works.
Sustainable development places nature over man. According to the Rio Declaration, human beings are at the center of concerns for sustainable development. We are only entitled to a healthy life if it is in harmony with nature. It continues, to achieve sustainable development, states should reduce and eliminate unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. Most people support laws to protect the environment. Sustainable development uses the environmental movement as the means to promote a political agenda. ICLEI is the non-governmental organization tasked with rolling out sustainable development. Their action plan restructures the world's governments so that all people will be the subjects of a global collective. The implementation requires the surrender of many individual and property rights. Once fully implemented, ordinary people will be left unprotected from de facto decrees placing nature above man while relegating man to the status of a biological resource. The method of implementing sustainable development in communities is alarming. Projects are often initiated by groups such as ICLEI or the American Planning Association, who create fear over problems portrayed as a crisis. Farmland development, urban sprawl, poor water management, wildlife preservation, or too many cars on the freeway are examples. Stakeholder council meetings are typically arranged under the auspices of soliciting input from community members. Often these are already supporters of the plan. Surveys poll a small number of residents and include loaded questions such as, which of the following areas do you think should be protected or acquired? A typical stakeholder council meeting is run by a trained facilitator. His job is not to enter all views into the record, but to guide the group to a predetermined consensus. Tactics vary between facilitators, but consensus generally is reached by subtly marginalizing opposition while recording the good ideas and allowing criticism only for the bad ones. Once a problem has been identified, every NGO, nonprofit, and local government has a vast stock of boilerplate solutions at hand, enabling them to identify problems with the goal of implementing predetermined outcomes that advance sustainable development policies. The same stock solutions are applied in Stockholm, Boulder, Santa Cruz, or anywhere in the world. ICLEI, whose mission is to help local governments implement sustainable development, has worldwide offices and operates in over 600 U.S. communities. Today, every county in the United States has sustainable development directives guided by federal agencies, NGOs, and/or ICLEI. NGOs often gain local community compliance with promises of funding grants. Their list of money sources is impressive and includes the Nature Conservancy, the Sierra Club, the National Audubon Society, the American Planning Association, and the National Teachers Association. Over 2,000 NGOs are accredited by the United Nations for the purpose of implementing sustainable development in America. They receive massive tax advantages from the IRS.
NGO means non-governmental organization.
This map shows the UN's vision for our country's land use when sustainable development is fully implemented.
So basically, as you kind of heard there, Agenda 21 is being implemented everywhere. It doesn't really matter whether you're not going to see it. And ironically, and I've had several council members from around this area approach me to have me, of all people, I have no education background whatsoever in accounting or anything, to have me explain what their financial report is. Because we have the budget and the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. One of the most important things anybody can know about is the CAFR. So councilmen will come to me and have me explain and show them where the government, the local government and the county and the state is hiding literally billions of dollars, all in investment funds. So what's ironic is that most councilmen are clueless about Agenda 21. They don't know that within every council, as this video was just saying, within every council, in every government council, there's always, almost always a member of ICLEI, which I can't remember what that stands for right now, which is a front for Agenda 21. And he is the one that is guiding the meetings. He's the one that's using what's called best practices to employ, again, the Delphi technique so that the public really has no input whatsoever as to what's going on. And most things, most importantly to know, is that most things that are happening today, most of the policies that are being passed, the laws that are being passed, the stadiums that are being built, the housing developments that are being built, none of this anymore, nothing government does, hardly at all, requires your approval. No voter approval. It's all done through public-private partnerships, what's called lease agreements. An example of a lease agreement would be Chicago. Chicago sold off their parking garages and their parking meters to JP Morgan Chase. So they entered into a public-private partnership with JP Morgan Chase. So now the parking garages and the parking meters, basically it's like $25 to park for a half an hour in Chicago. That's because JP Morgan Chase now runs it. So what the city did was they said, okay, we're going to enter into a lease agreement with JP Morgan Chase. They're going to pay us, let's say $5 billion today, and we're going to let them run the parking garage and keep all the profits for the next 50 years. Oh, well, there's no regulation that says they can't raise the price, which is why the parking meters went up so high, which is why you're going to see your toll lanes out here, your, what do they call it, the commuter lanes, the carpool lanes. A lot of those are being turned into toll lanes. Well, what do you think those tolls are that you see? You can buy a card to ride in the carpool lane with only one person. Well, that's a public-private partnership with some corporation, I don't know what. So basically, we get $5 billion today, and our infrastructure asset is now privatized. JP Morgan Chase runs it, hires a bunch of foreign workers, and now we have a privatized public infrastructure. Okay? By 50 years, they're going to make $20, $30, $40 billion, which was all revenue that was supposed to come back, according to the original plan, to the taxpayer. Instead, it goes right to JP Morgan Chase. And we get a hefty sum of money today, and guess what? All that money gets put into investment funds. Because if they suddenly say, hey folks, we have $5 billion, we don't need to charge you taxes this year, we can fix all the potholes, well then there goes all the money. See, government invests all of your taxpayer money it can, so that it can say, as a nonprofit, well, We didn't make any profit this year because it's all over here in investments, just like you don't have to pay capital gains until you sell your stock, neither does government. And so we're basically in a situation where, like any manager of any company that has a bunch of wealth that comes into him, he's going to say, wow, I have $5,000 left over this year. Well, I can't justify asking for more money, so I'm going to spend that $5,000 on a bunch of pens. I'm going to store those pens. It doesn't really matter. I just need to show the boss that I spent all of my budget. And then I'm going to spend maybe $3,000 more and put us in debt in our department so that I can justify asking for more money the next year. That's what government is doing with you and your taxpayer money. It is collecting the money through fees, non-governmental activities like golf courses, sewers and stuff like that, districts, and it's taking that money, putting it into the general fund, and then it's gone. It just disappears into the ether, and the budget report doesn't show that, only the comprehensive annual financial report. Again, if you want to check that out and understand that, thecorporationnation.com has documentaries there that you can watch. Let's plug in here. How much time you guys got? Am I boring you? All right. The United Nations, it infiltrates through treaties, compacts, private contracts, and it does so under international law, private, maritime, and admiralty law. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution says the President shall have power by and with advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur with the treaty. So there's a problem here. A properly legally concluded U.S. treaty overrules any state law. So the federal treaty overrules state law and any state constitution, not the federal constitution, not the main gig there. So a U.S. treaty, meaning the national treaty, cannot, is forbidden to overrule the United States Constitution or abrogate the sovereignty of the United States. If it does, it's not a bona fide treaty. It can't exist in reality. It's a usurpation, basically. It's not under the authority of the United States to make such a treaty to give up the sovereignty of the United States. So treaties made or which shall be made, is what it says in the Constitution, that violate the U.S. Constitution by subjugating the United States to an outside power like the United Nations are prohibited and thus null and void. Well, see, that's the trick. And that's why ICLEI and other organizations, thousands of organizations, are infiltrating on the local and state level. You see, because they can't infiltrate necessarily into the federal government other than to put their people there and to wine and dine politicians. So they have to attack us on the local level. That's why you have an ICLEI member in every city council. That's why you have all of these best practices coming to the state and local level, because states can be changed. The federal Constitution is very specific that it cannot be changed, but the states can be changed. Did you have a question, or you just...
No.
Okay. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 of the Constitution. The Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for the carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all the powers vested by the Constitution in this government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Okay? The word necessity. The law of necessity is actually one of the maxims of law. An example is, if I don't want to be a taxpayer, and yet I still need money to survive and buy food, by necessity, the moral imperative to not use such a corrupt system of currency and support the whole system that enslaves me goes by the wayside, because without it I will die. I have to use currency, the Federal Reserve notes, to buy food. That would be an example of necessity. So when Congress uses the word necessity, necessary and proper, it literally does the same thing, and it uses all kinds of excuses to make that happen. So again, they have to attack the local level, the state level. They cannot attack the federal government like they can us here in the local municipalities. Now, the Articles of Confederation says each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this confederation expressly delegated. So the Continental Congress had no powers except those which were actually given to them in the Articles of Confederation. But the necessary and proper clause in the Constitution gives this power to Congress to do exactly what I said. Well, sorry, we're gonna usurp your rights because it's necessary. We're gonna eminent domain your property because it's necessary to the public good. No other clauses do this in the Constitution, really. It creates an unlimited loophole to create what is deemed necessary laws and treaties, even when they're against the ideals of the Constitution, unfortunately. So as long as it doesn't change the actual function of government, doesn't mean that a treaty has to be constitutional. A treaty may delegate state and local power to the federal government. That's the trick. In order for the federal government to take control of the states have to enter into some form of treaty that gets rid of their sovereignty. Again, attack it on the local level. That's what Agenda 21 is all about across the world. Federalists argued that this necessary power would only permit execution of power already granted by the Constitution. Anti-Federalists argued that this clause would grant the central government boundless power. The Virginia Ratifying Convention, Patrick Henry, took the opposing view, stating that the clause would lead to limitless federal power that would inevitably menace individual liberty. And that's what we're seeing, is almost limitless federal power as a state of the United Nations, the states of the United States basically disappearing through treaty. Yale Law, in one of its briefs to fight this, said the necessary and proper clause gives Congress the power to make all laws necessary for carrying into execution all other powers vested in the Constitution, the treaty power included, and the treaty power grants the President and the Senate the power to make all treaties on behalf of the United States, whether those treaties are self-executing or not. Some treaties are beyond the federal government's power to implement, but that is because they are beyond the federal government's power to make in the first place. A treaty may not contravene the Constitution and may not cause what the plurality in Reed versus Covert referred to as a change in the character of the government. A treaty that violates the Constitution is not a valid treaty. Again, that's fine. That's where the government gets into contracts and gets into private law with the states and local municipalities. Again, I'm going to reiterate this, you must attack the nation at the local level. One of the ways they're doing this is to create what's called inland ports, foreign trade zones, and virtual waterways. And this is very interesting because if you look at a map of the United States, has anybody heard of the NAFTA superhighway in here? It's basically a highway that goes from Mexico to Canada and different places in the United States. And they consider it essentially a foreign road. It's what they call a virtual waterway. Admiralty and maritime law, which are mentioned in the Constitution, are basically deal with water. The flag, the United States flag, is an Admiralty flag. It was used for ships way back when. So if I look at a map of the United States, there's all kinds of points that are called foreign trade zones, and I have highways that are virtual waterways. And so a truck can come from Mexico, South America, Canada, wherever, and literally drive through the United States to a foreign trade zone and never, ever touch the United States. That is how the sovereignty of the nation and the power to regulate interstate commerce and all that is being just completely destroyed at this point. So a state trooper, for instance, would not be able to stop a semi-truck carrying drugs from Mexico because the truck has diplomatic immunity as long as it's on a waterway. It would be like hijacking a ship, basically. So, foreign trade zones. Here's from the Salt Lake Tribune. Salt Lake City's foreign trade zone still awaits its first tenant. This was back in August 11th, 2011. Even though the zone is still without a tenant, 3 years after the federal government gave it the go-ahead to form, did you hear that? The foreign government allowed the foreign trade zone to form in the state of Utah through treaty, through contract. Supporters say they are optimistic a deal soon be struck that will generate the first operation on the property. Well, the website for this, Salt Lake City's foreign trade zone, asks, why do we have a Salt Lake City foreign trade zone? Strategically located on 55 acres adjacent to the Union Pacific Intermodal Terminal and within close proximity to the Salt Lake City International Airport, another foreign trade zone basically, a constitution-free zone, and major interstate highways. The 15 is part of that concept of a international waterway or virtual waterway. It's kind of hard to imagine. How many are familiar with the Rockefellers? Yeah, I figured. Everybody knows they're kind of the bad guys. Well, the Economic Development Foreign Trade Zone is sponsored by the Rockefeller Group. Rockefeller Group Foreign Trade Zone Services, the corporation, is developing the Salt Lake City Foreign Trade Zone. Just so you know. I won't go much more into this. They're federally designated secure locations in the United States. Major advantage of merchandise admitted to the foreign trade zone is that it is treated as though it were located outside of the United States for customs and duty purposes. Again, you can deliver whatever you want to these things, and there is no worries. If it's drugs, if it's nuclear bombs, great. It's outside of the United States. It's not in the state of Utah. It's a foreign zone right in the middle of Utah and right in the middle of the jurisdiction of the United States, but it's outside of all of that. This is another tool to just basically just destroy any kind of sovereignty or any kind of power to regulate all this stuff. The address for this, in case you want to check it out, is 4800 West, 1100 South in Salt Lake City. 40,000 square feet and 360,000 square feet of warehouse space. The Sustainable Development or Agenda 21 site for Salt Lake City, and I apologize, I didn't do the research for down here. It's kind of hard to find these things sometimes. The Sustainable Development site for Salt Lake City is Salt Lake City, or slcgreen.org, I believe. Salt Lake City Green is comprised of award-winning environmental programs that continue to help us conserve resources, reduce pollution, slow climate change, and ensure a healthy, sustainable future for Salt Lake City. Now, when we go to Envision Utah, we have, because they're trying to get people out of the wildlands through the Wildlands Project, we are expecting to double our population in this whole area by 2040. Now, if you can imagine how much infrastructure that's going to take to double a population, part of that's going to be these foreign trade zones. The interesting thing about a foreign trade zone, people from China can come work there without it being a citizen or without needing any permission to work here because they're in a foreign zone. It's no longer the United States. The sustainable plan for Salt Lake City is called Sustainable Salt Lake Plan 2015, and you can pull that up. Here's a picture of Mayor Ralph Becker. Very happy to be associated with Agenda 21, getting a lot of kickbacks, no doubt. Over the last 5 years, our pursuit of success in sustainability, social justice, neighborhood, and downtown vitality, there's those magic words, has helped shape our collective vision for how we live, work, recreate, and grow in Salt Lake City. livability has emerged as a unifying theme for framing our properties. It goes on and on and on, just happy, 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 like the train example with a happy face. Salt Lake City wishes to thank the U.S. Department of Energy for providing financial support for preparing and publishing this plan. Now this is one of the most important things to understand, because with federal funds comes federal regulations. If you accept money from the federal government, like all of our municipalities do, and counties and states, well, with that money, you're going to have to follow all the rules of government. Well, what are going to be the rules? That you accept sustainability, that you do exactly what Agenda 21 wants you to do. All right, so any questions so far?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago up at the airport, and they had a fellow state representative from Oklahoma, and they nullified having this road coming through from Mexico clear up to Canada from passing through Oklahoma. They stopped it, but they did it by nullification, and I got to research it further to get his bill to get it to our senator and representative to get nullification passed.
Yeah, unfortunately, Utah is heavily, heavily steeped in Agenda 21 policies. Again, that's why all this growth is happening, and it's being federally funded as well as corporately funded. And you also find that part of those investments I was talking about with government, a big part of that is low-interest loans called bonds or corporate bonds to corporations. So a lot of your taxpayer money goes into the government through fees and taxes and goes right back out to corporations like Microsoft, banks, and everything else as low-interest loans. That's what's happening to all your taxpayer money. Then the corporation uses that money, comes back in, and does the stuff we're talking about. Buys parking garages with your own taxpayer money. You see how the vicious cycle is. Because we're so entertained, I'll say, and we don't ever pay attention to what's actually happening in the backgrounds. We don't read these financial reports. We have no idea that all this money is being loaned out. Government is the main holder of toxic debt. Your pension funds own massive, massive amounts of mortgage-backed securities. Okay, you guys are funding that through your, it's basically because of ignorance. We just don't understand that this is happening. I'll skip through a little bit of this because I've been watching Salt Lake City for a while, and I've seen, I've seen what this plan, strategies and 2015 targets for this Sustainable Salt Lake Plan 2015. So we have the train system that's going in where we know that people are really not even going to use the train. It doesn't matter. It's a sustainable development plan. It's coming from a much, much larger place, much, much higher place. The bureaucrats in government are just rubber stamping. That's all they're doing. What is your...
So with the acceptance of the federal money, that's what allows the treaties to be implemented?
Yeah, well, think about like a mortgage. If you accept money from a bank is just a middleman for government, basically. They create the money. Actually, interesting enough, there is no money in a bank. Banks, it's just deposits and credits. When you get a loan, the bank is just putting a journal entry into its ledger, and it's creating digital money. It doesn't actually exist. It's a credit. And you get that money and digitally, and you go do what you want. Well, you've just accepted money from government. When you sign that little signature card to get your bank account, you're actually signing a major, major long contract to agree with all the banking rules of the Federal Reserve and of government. So you get your money, and the bank didn't spend any of its own money, so all the principal and interest that you're paying back to the bank is pure profit. We think, well, we're honest, good citizens. We're going to pay our principal balance off. Truth is, the bank never loaned you any of its own money. That money didn't exist until you took it out by signing. We talked about the same thing with appropriations. Government is creating debt when it does appropriations. Your taxpayer money is already spent or invested. So when you get that mortgage, you sign a 40-page contract that says your house is collateral. You have to pay this amortized payment. You have to do this certain thing. You have to get insurance. And, government made it easy for us to be enslaved. They went ahead and let the bank start collecting your property taxes. Isn't that nice of them? So now your property tax is included in your bill, and that's a requirement of the bank and the government to pay your taxes with your amortized payment. Likewise, if a municipality accepts federal funds, those funds must be designated for a certain purpose. So it's not like a municipality or a state gets federal funds and says, hey, great, we got all this money, what are we going to do with it? No, here's the money, here's what you're going to do with it. That's the danger, and the end of that video actually goes into that. The worst thing that any government can do, local government, is accept anything federal, because that literally ties the hands of all the politicians. So, very important point. You have energy strategies. They're generating solar. They're all kinds of different things. I'm going to just speed through these. Transportation, which I mentioned. Complete the open Sugar House streetcar, fund or begin construction on downtown streetcar. Work with Utah Transit Authority to extend track service until 1 a.m. Increase pre-paved shared use trails by 25%. Establish a city parking management entity, that's a public-private partnership. Increase the number of motorcycle parking spots, because they want you to get away from cars, because that represents a privilege that not everybody in the world can have. It's just, you read this plan and you see what's been happening for the last 2 or 3 years, and you'll see that everything in here is going to come to fruition. One of them is called open space. We have open spaces. That was one of the key words that we talked about. Let's see. Restore 61 acres of natural lands. Restore 25 acres of land from the Jordan River. If that means taking people's property to create the buffer zone for the natural land along the river, so be it. Those people are going to be out of luck. That's Agenda 21. So, I'm sorry, did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I think we're victims of ignorance.
Absolutely.
People just aren't aware of all this stuff.
I know.
How can the Utah House and Senate senators be educated so that they can see what's happening?
Well,
as long as they don't know what's happening, nothing's going to change.
Unfortunately, the answer that I have for you is that they're very educated. They know exactly what they're doing. They're getting kickbacks from it. My Draper City Council, when they eminent, they will actually buy properties, sell it to developers, knowing that the master plan will eventually take back that land through eminent domain. So they've just bought property, sold it to a developer, and then they're going to retake that property for the city. Okay, if you think that your senators and congressmen are the good guys, well then that's unfortunately the ignorance of the American people. Because remember, and you'll understand this, I think, much better right after when you start understanding how these guys actually work, you will answer your own question. I guarantee it. So housing is another one. Education. Okay, these are the strategies for education. Implement a capital city education model to create a culture of readiness for college careers and civil life in Salt Lake City. This is funny. Create a steering committee and working groups to develop 5 core areas that are called Ready to Learn, Learning to Learn, Learning to Explore, Explore Learning, and Live to Learn. Do you remember when it was arithmetic, science, math, that kind of thing? Well, now it's these Agenda 21 code words, green words, basically, that we're doing. I want to skip some of these. support development of a robust environmental education program, involve college students in city government through internships and online resources. One of the most important parts of this is the online aspect. As we mentioned earlier with Microsoft, they want to take your children and completely immerse them into the computer. Take them away from nature. If you're going to learn about nature, you're going to be learning on the computer about nature. You're going to see pictures of nature. You're going to watch nature shows through the computer. You're not actually going to learn or go and actually get any physical contact with nature. A very important part of this is the social media. The Agenda 21 and Common Core, one of its main tenets is to get kids into social media, whether that means massive online games where you can explore the whole world online, virtual reality. After the presentation, I'll show you some pictures that are just going to blow your mind. Pictures of kids. And by the way, this Common Core is in the military. It's been in the military for more than 10 years. They're training soldiers, FBI, CIA. These are all Common Core standard training modules that are happening. It's very important when you see how they're training people in the military. It's like the worst science fiction movie. You'll see it reminds me of the movie Coma, actually. You have a soldier training for parachuting. He's up suspended like this, like a straw man, on wires, and he's got a huge virtual reality helmet on. And the idea is to have him suspended there, cords coming in all over his body to simulate the reality of parachuting for real, a gravity-less type of thing. That is how they want to teach your kids. They want to put a big, huge virtual reality so that the world disappears. And the best way to really take over society, in my opinion, is to get people to get smart technology. How many people have a smartphone in here? Well, I hate to tell you this, but you're not too smart for getting a smartphone. Smart growth, smart meters, smart technology, smart phones. These are all Agenda 21 principles. For one thing, everything we're saying today is going right to the NSA. Right now, even if your phone is off, even if you take the battery out of your phone, there's a secondary battery in there that will be recording everything we're saying. And since we're saying these key words, the computer's going to pick it up. So everything you do is going to be recorded. The NSA Center is so massive, it's almost impossible to explain how much virtual space is in those computers that they're building. To the point where they can record everybody on Earth, basically. It's an incredible thing. If you actually look at it, I'll let you do that by yourself. We'll continue with this, though. Recognize the district's efforts with a private sector partners to reward teaching excellence and school accomplishments. Establish a city policy on volunteering and serve as a model for supporting civic engagement of employees in schools. Work with higher education partners, employers to support adult education and training. One word here on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You mentioned that in the video. Basically, the Declaration of Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is geared towards all people on Earth. It's when they say society in the United Nations, they mean Earth, the people of Earth. Social welfare and social justice program in Article 22 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, everyone as a member of society, that's the entire human population, has the right to social security. And is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. Sounds wonderful. I mean, hey, all these fancy words. Well, this becomes implemented through uniform legislation. The bill is created in the United Nations. All of the members of the United Nations that represent each nation cooperate. A conspiracy is defined as a plan between two or more people, nothing more, nothing less. They all get together, I think it's something like 192 countries. They create legislation, and then they go back to their nations. And they implement United Nations legislation. They might not say that it's from the United Nations. They might not say that it's a uniform act or a uniform law, but suddenly every country in the world has the same law. Okay, now you asked how can we educate our congressmen and governors and that kind of thing. Well, you're about to find out they are on the same model but on a national level. They all belong to private associations. They get together, they create the laws. For instance, the National Governors Association that created Common Core. They went to Washington, D.C., all 50 governors. They created the Common Core standards along with ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and a bunch of other private associations. The National Governors Association is a private association. It's non-governmental. So they literally leave their state. Okay, all the governors. They are the members of this private association. They all travel outside, over here, to the United States. The United States, they have diplomatic immunity. There's no law that says they can't go over there and conspire together to create something. They create Common Core, then they come back to their states, just like the United Nations model, the model legislation, uniform acts. Okay, this is how over 119 uniform acts have happened in the United States. Every state passes the same law that's created in private associations. So Common Core has been passed in 45 states now. Common Core is copyrighted, and you need permission from the National Governors Association to have and implement Common Core standards. You think they don't know what's going on? They created it. That's your governors. Okay? So literally, if you want to talk about a conspiracy, that's the greatest one I've ever seen. The problem is, every single aspect of government, from your mayors with the National or International Mayors Association, GFOA is the Government Financial Officers Association, you have your city council, you have the Association of State Legislatures, you have all of these. That's where all the law is being written. So they all gather in these big conventions, they write the laws, and then they all go back to either their states, their counties, their districts, or their municipalities. And the law gets passed. Strangely enough, the same law that's in Hawaii and Alaska is the same law that's in Florida and New York. It's uniform law. United Nations is the same model, but on a grand scale, where all countries do the same exact thing. All the nations, they meet in the United Nations, create the law, go back to their nations, and rubber stamp. Okay, same thing in America. All the governors go, they meet in their association, they create the law, Common Core standards, then they go back to their states, and they rubber stamp. So, to say that we need to educate our legislature and our governors, and anyone in government at all, is a severe, severe mistake. So that's the best answer I can give you to that. We're not dealing with honorable men, in other words. Okay, we're dealing with a force here that is an unbelievably powerful organization, all being done through private partnerships, private-public partnerships, and through private associations. That's why I said at the beginning, we have to relearn government. Government does not exist in the capacity that we learned in high school and that we're so used to and we see in the movies and we see on the news. It doesn't exist. Everything is being done through private associations. They are non-governmental or NGO, and they, strangely enough, they meet in Washington, D.C. So that's really what we're facing. So it's not a matter of, the next question would be what would be the solution to that, obviously, and that's a very difficult one that I'm not going to get into at the moment. But UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, is an international conference on education for a sustainable future, happened in Prague, September 10th through 11th in 2003. Okay, this is what it said. Quote, the UN has declared 2005 through 2015, remember that from the report we just read, the decade of education for sustainable development, and has designated UNESCO as the lead agency for its promotion. I'm going to read that again. 2005 through 2015 is the decade of education for sustainable development, Agenda 21, and has designated UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, as the lead agency for its promotion. That's not just in Washington, D.C., or that's not just in the United Nations. That's all the nations. It's everywhere. The goal, as stated in this document, quote, integrate sustainable development into all levels of education in order to promote education as a key agent for change. Now, if I were to decipher that, I would say integrate sustainable development, or Agenda 21, into all levels of education in order to promote uniform stupidity amongst children. So that, like many of the people out there, they have no idea that all of this is happening behind their backs. We still believe, we want the children to believe that we still have a republic and a democracy and all that stuff. Okay, that's the truth. So, we mentioned the international, we mentioned Social Security, I should say. Social Security is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I call it the mark of the beast. Okay? The beast being government. International Social Security is handled by the International Social Security Association in the United Nations. From the ISSA website, it says, promoting and developing Social Security worldwide. The International Social Security Association is the principal international institution bringing together Social Security agencies and organizations. Did you know that Social Security is all over the world? The ISSA's aim is to promote dynamic Social Security as the social dimension in a globalizing world by supporting excellence in Social Security administration. Now remember, founded in 1927, the ISSA, or International Social Security Association, a private association, non-governmental, has its headquarters at the International Labor Office, International Labor, no longer United States Labor, in Geneva, Switzerland. Important to note that the original United States Social Security Act was not passed until 1935, 8 years after the ISSA was founded. And it was founded, the International Social Security Administration or Association was founded in the League of Nations, which was then defunct. It survived, and that's how we got our Social Security. Interesting, China also has the Social Security Administration of China. Okay? This is again, the illusion is that we have Social Security and we don't pay attention to the rest of the world. The fact is that over 130 or 156 countries have Social Security. And if you don't know about the Social Security Investment Fund, which is really where all the money goes, ours is at over $4 trillion. Oh no, but Social Security is broke. No, it's actually all put into an investment fund, and it's worth over $4 trillion. They project that it will be worth over $10 trillion in 20 years. Okay, that's going on in every country. Social Security is no different than a pension fund. It is a massive investment scheme for government, nothing else. The ISSA website, promoting and developing Social Security worldwide. The International Social Security Association is the principal international institution bringing together Social Security agencies and organizations. Its aim is to promote dynamic Social Security as the social dimension in a globalizing world by supporting excellence, Provides access to information, expert advice, business standards, practical guidelines, defines that dynamic Social Security refers to Social Security systems that are accessible, sustainable, adequate, socially inclusive, and economically productive. Now, you remember from that video, the idea is to take all the wealth out of the United States and other developed countries in order to create, if you will, equality amongst the rest of the world. In other words, take your wealth, your property, etc., and basically make everybody equal citizens of the United Nations. So that's what we're talking about. I call it the mark of the beast because Social Security literally is kind of like accepting funds from government. With your Social Security, you have to follow so much. Excuse me, the ISSA has 338 member organizations, which are non-governmental private associations, in 159 countries. That's how many countries have Social Security. Okay? Now, how many people knew that in here? Not one? Besides you. See, this is the amazing thing about, well, for me, it's the amazing thing about giving up everything else and strictly becoming a primary researcher. In other words, I'm not going out and reading books. I'm not doing that. I'm strictly looking at this boring stuff and putting all these pieces together. I know people don't have time to do this. And that, you know, once this stuff started becoming clear, that's what drove me to to do what I'm doing. And again, remember, I'm not here to sell you anything. I don't want anything from you. I just want to inform you, because this, unless we share this and we understand this mutually, we're just going to continue to become more and more ignorant. We're going to be convinced that our smart technology and our smartphones is the best thing ever. I mean, government's going to eventually just give them to us. They're already giving them to all the children in Common Core at your taxpayer dollar expense. So, again, this is the road to hell, if you will. It's the road to something called transhumanism. Your kids are eventually going to want implants so that they can access their technology quicker and more realistically. They're going to want big face masks for virtual reality. Unfortunately, that's where we're going. Oh, we'll skip some of this stuff. I apologize. Does people need a break? I've got a lot more information. We can get straight into the Common Core stuff if you want. I don't want to bore people, and I don't want to make you not go to the bathroom or anything.
You just brought a picture of the movie The Matrix to my mind.
You know what the Matrix is? Matrix is an allegory for the artificial person, what they call the straw man. You notice that in order to escape the Matrix, the main character has to go through. he has to follow the white rabbit, which leads him to Trinity, which is mind, body, and soul, basically. Okay, it's like self-actualization, realizing that you're in this complete contractual nature, right? Trinity then leads him out of the artificial nature of corporatism, of citizenship, and all of that. And when it boils down to, unfortunately, the Matrix is the government, is the United States. So the only solution that I can come up with myself is for us to start. Well, I mean, I'll put it this way: if you're a member of a gym, let's say you're a member of Gold's Gym, and they pass a law that says on Fridays you have to wear pink leotards with white polka dots. Well, are you going to stay a member? Or are you going to maybe find another gym or just not have a gym at all? So we can quit Gold's Gym. The question is, can we quit government? Can we quit the central government and get back to what we had, which is going back to 1776, which was state governments, where we actually have control, not by a central organization, which is the United Nations, through the federal government. So again, remember, it's hard for people to imagine this, but the United States is just this little tiny piece of land. It's a district way over here, not even one of the states. It's outside of all the states. It's not one of us. And yet it governs us through all of this contractual nature and all these monies that we accept from it. Of course, again, remember, the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, the most important one of those is a central bank. You must control the wealth. You must control the money. Okay? The money is the root of all evil. The money roots the states to the federal government. It roots you through debt. So, again, I don't have solutions on a grand scale. All I can offer is my own personal opinion that the problem is that we are all still members of Gold's Gym. You know, so I think that's what the Matrix. My interpretation of it is discovering your own sovereignty, and realizing that when you get out of the Matrix, there is no entertainment. It's just a really bland. It's nature. It's beautiful, but it's not all this entertainment and smartphones and everything else. You see, that's my interpretation of it.
The International Social Security Association provides access to information, expert advice, business standards, practical guidelines, and platforms for members to build and promote dynamic Social Security systems worldwide. The vision of dynamic Social Security provides a framework for the ISSA's action. Dynamic Social Security refers to Social Security systems that are accessible, sustainable, adequate, socially inclusive, and economically productive, and that are based on performing, well-governed, proactive, and innovative Social Security institutions. In line with the nature of the ISSA as an association of Social Security institutions, the vision of promoting dynamic Social Security ties Social Security improvements to the capacities and performance of these institutions. This effort by the ISSA is very much supported by the World Bank. The Social Protection Unit, as part of the Human Development Network, supports the World Bank and client countries to assist individuals, households, and communities to better manage the income and welfare risks that affect vulnerable groups. The unit is charged with developing concepts and strategies for social protection policy and with carrying out support functions to operational work, largely in the areas of disability, labor markets, pensions, safety nets, and social funds. In all these areas, the unit provides operational support to the regions and leadership for strategy development and results, knowledge management, training, and development of partnerships. So what exactly is this Human Development Network? The Human Development Network is the World Bank's home for policy, programs, and research in the fields of education, health, nutrition, and population, social protection and labor, children and youth, HIV/AIDS, and development dialogue. Its mission is to assist low- and middle-income country governments to individually and collectively increase the inclusive and efficient investment in people, with a view of driving faster and more equitable growth. The Human Development Network is dedicated to actively participate in global efforts that contribute to poverty reduction through improving access to education, health and social services, and to build balanced and competitive societies. Once again, this is the taking away of power from one nation and giving it to the other, so that no nation can get ahead, just like your children.
A couple more words about the U.S. Involvement with the International Social Security Association. Since the late 1970s, the United States has established a network of bilateral, in other words, agreements between two countries, Social Security agreements that coordinate the U.S. Social Security program with the comparable programs of other countries. This article gives a brief overview of the agreements and should be of particular interest. This is right from the official Social Security website of the United States. I have a list of countries that we are in agreements with, and What this means is that the United States and the country that I'm going to name have a bilateral agreement, a contract, that says, if I move over here, I'm still going to pay Social Security over here. And if this person in this country or nation moves over here, the government here will force them to pay their Social Security over here. That way all the investment funds can continue to go. Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, Norway, Canada, United Kingdom, which is the whole, Australia and everything, Sweden, Spain, France, Portugal, Netherlands, Austria, Finland, Ireland, Luxembourg, Greece, South Korea, Chile, Australia, Japan, Denmark, the Czech Republic, and Poland. So if you move to any of those first world countries, you're not going to escape the tyranny of Social Security. I want to say one other thing. ISSA, International Social Security Association, welcomes UN resolution on universal health care. Now, you got to think about this for a moment. Obamacare is universal health care. This was not just something that Obama thought of and said, hey, I want to do it. No, universal health care is very much like Social Security. They want everybody in the healthcare system. The best way to control people is through their medical records. In order to have medical records on everybody, you have to be a part of the Social Security. You have to have a number. You're a commodity, in other words. So, if you think about this, well, let me read this here. The ISSA has welcomed the adoption of by the UN General Assembly of a resolution on affordable universal health care, which further recognizes access to basic Social Security services. Okay? Obamacare was put into Title 42 of U.S. Code. Title 42 is called the Public Health and Welfare. You might remember the word welfare from the Constitution. It's a capitalized word, meaning it's a proper noun, and it refers to a specific form of welfare. That's the welfare that we have, from Medicare to Social Security to unemployment and everything else. Well, a big part of that welfare, of course, is the access to health care. The difference is that Obamacare isn't about giving you access to health care. Obamacare is about forcing you into yet another investment fund called insurance. Whether it's Social Security insurance, medical insurance, homeowners insurance, auto insurance, these are all, remember this folks, these are all investment funds. They play on the fact that you get a benefit. But if you go to any court case that talks about the benefits that you receive from government, the court's opinion will always be that if you accept the benefit, you must also accept the negative averments and everything else that comes with that benefits. You have a duty to a lot of rules if you accept Social Security, if you accept Medicare, if you accept all of these things, if you accept universal health care. This is very similar to municipalities accepting federal monies. By accepting the money, they have to follow a specific set of rules that dictates where that money goes. If you accept Social Security, you have to follow a specific set of dictates under contract to how you can spend that money, the amount of taxes you're going to have to pay back into the system. Okay, it's the same model over and over and over and over again. And again, it's a massive investment. How do you get everybody in the world to contribute voluntarily, quote unquote, to the government's investment scheme? You create benefits. That's what this is all about. So most of Obamacare is in Title 42, which is the same code as Social Security, because the two are completely intertwined. You wouldn't be able to even get it without a Social Security number is the point. And that's going to be on a worldwide basis. Now we've come to the section where we're going to really talk about Common Core and how this works. We're going to be talking about nonprofits, tax-exempt private associations, non-governmental organizations, which are the NGOs. Those includes the Sierra Club, the World Wildlife Fund, your Greenpeace and all of those are all used as weapons to take over the lands. You remember the train picture that I showed you? Where the train's winding through the forest, and the forest is perfect, no houses, no nothing, it's just untouched. Again, that's what the goal is here, is to get everybody onto the little pieces of land that are designated for human use, and everything else is going to be used for wildlands restoration. What you don't know is that a large part of our national park system, we all think of that as an altruistic effort to preserve land. But what that really was the federal takeover of land. Simple as that. Puts a piece of paper on the land and says it's now titled to government. Well, you know, do you realize how many natural resources are on those lands? Do you have any idea how valuable that land, as far as the mineral estate and the oil? America has more oil on its lands, especially in its federal lands and the Bureau of Land Management lands, than, from what I understand, through the reserve up there it's being tapped right now in North Dakota, that we would never be dependent on anything. So the idea is to get that land and that value away from the people into federal hands. The only way to do that is to depopulate the areas. Whether that's force, where they killed the Indians to get the land, or whether that's through Agenda 21, sustainable development, moving all the people into stack 'em and pack 'em high-rises. So they use groups like the Sierra Club and all of these wildlife, what are they called, endangered species, that kind of thing, in order to falsely claim that the land should not be inhabited anymore, or never should. And then, of course, that land is taken, put into federal care and receivership. And unfortunately, a lot of our public parks, or our federal lands, are being sold or put into lease agreements, again, with corporations, oil corporations, gold mining corporations. That is what's happening. That's the importance of Agenda 21, to use these non-governmental associations as experts. If I were to go and try to talk against one of the experts, I would be laughed off the stage. Because the experts are the ones that reach consensus. Remember that. Public-private partnerships, uniform laws, best practices, and the master plan, which we talked about. The first and foremost, most important thing of this whole presentation, the backbone of everything, right here. George Bush, in April 30th, 1992, Executive Order number 12803, called Infrastructure Privatization. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, that's a loose statement, and in order to ensure that the United States achieves the most beneficial economic use of its resources, land and mineral estates are resources, it is hereby ordered, and real estate, it is hereby ordered as follows. I'm going to read you the definitions of what's happening here. Okay, infrastructure privatization. Remember we talked about the parking garages and the parking meters. Section 1, definitions. For the purposes of this order, privatization means the disposition or transfer of an infrastructure asset, such as by sale or by long-term lease, which is what they did with J.P. Morgan Chase, from a state or local government to a private party. State or local government. Remember that. Because remember, you have to tackle the local level, not the federal level. And when states accept money from the federal government, guess what? They're now bound to submit to infrastructure privatization. What is an infrastructure asset? Now listen to this list very carefully, because this is all of the assets of infrastructure that your fathers and possibly you built. Infrastructure asset means any asset financed in whole or in part by the federal government and needed for the functioning of the economy. Examples of such assets include, but are certainly not limited to, roads, tunnels, bridges, electricity supply facilities. Remember that list she read at the beginning? Mass transit, rail transportation, airports, ports, waterways, which again, a waterway can technically be land or concrete or anything else, just depends how you define it in law. Water supply facilities, recycling and wastewater treatment facilities, solid waste disposal facilities. And the last four are the most important, because this is your everyday life. Housing. When your houses are built, unbeknownst to you, a big old lien is put on your own personal property, your own mortgage. It's an invisible lien. It's the top position. And it protects or collateralizes the building of all these new homes and all these stack 'em and pack 'em Agenda 21 houses. The second one is schools. Schools are an infrastructure asset that can be privatized through sale or long-term lease. So all the money, see all these fancy schools that are going up, right? All the new schools used to be that the buildings were in poor repair and there was never a budget. Well, see what's happening is they're going around the taxpayer and they're entering into these lease agreements, private-public partnerships, and now corporations are building schools. And remember, government is loaning the money to the corporations through your taxpayer money, through corporate bonds, and then they're coming back and saying, we're coming to the rescue. We're going to enter into government contract with you, into a public-private partnership, and we're going to save the day. We're going to build you a new school. Unbeknownst to you, the school is no longer run by government. Prisons. Anybody heard of the private prison industry? You know, there was a memo that went back not too long ago to all 48 governors of this area, not Alaska and Hawaii. I can't remember the term for that. Continental. It said, hey governors, we want to privatize the prison industry. We're willing to offer you so many $millions, and all you have to do is sign a contract. The contract says, now that the prison is privatized, the state, taxpayers, through the governor and the legislature, has to guarantee that the private corporation, through lease agreement, that's running the private prisons, receives has 90% of its beds or cells filled. Okay? Now if you think about that for a minute, that means that whether those cells are filled or not, taxpayers are going to pay that private corporation to run that prison at 90% capacity no matter what. If it's more than that, they'll get more money. If it's less than that, they're guaranteed 90%. Well, what does that create? It creates conflict of interest. It means that it's in the best interest of the government to arrest people for what we call victimless crimes. Let's say you're smoking pot or not harming anyone, you jaywalked, whatever. Put you in prison and make you work at 45 cents an hour for prison labor wages. Okay? That is the privatization of prisons. Last one is hospitals. Okay? And that's very important considering universal health care, because what we discovered is that hospitals are getting away with, the whole idea behind this universal health care stuff is to force everybody into insurance. What insurance does is limit your rights. You've accepted a contract and you must accept the duties that come with that contract. That means that you no longer have the right to go into a hospital and demand to be treated for life-threatening illnesses or injuries under the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocratic Oath is one of the most important oaths in history. It means that a doctor cannot just look at someone and say, no, just let them die on the waiting room floor. Okay? Right now, I would say that an illegal alien, if there is such a thing, an illegal alien has more rights than anyone that's in an insurance plan. Because an illegal alien, if they are hurt, if they have a broken bone, they can walk into any non-profit hospital. That's the important part. A non-profit hospital must, under the law and under the Hippocratic Oath, treat that individual. Okay? That is a human right, not a citizen's right. Everything else is a benefit of insurance and citizenry. And this is why, through Obamacare, you can walk into a hospital and not be treated because you're under an insurance plan. That's the trick. Get rid of the Hippocratic Oath. So what we're seeing is a bunch of hospitals being built for profit as clinics and as big hospitals with no emergency room. Because you really have to go to the emergency room to be treated under the Hippocratic Oath, to be treated nonprofit. Nonprofit means they can't charge for their services. Anything that's nonprofit, even the Mormon church's Deseret Industries, the thrift stores, they cannot, by law, charge for anything you get out of that store. It's non-profit. The price that you pay is a suggested price. It's a donation. You cannot force someone to pay a donation. Same with hospitals. If you're a non-profit hospital, you must obey the most important oath in history, which is the Hippocratic Oath. This is the importance of Obamacare, because if we think about it, I mean, think of all the nuclear radiation tests, think of the vaccine damage that's been caused, think of all the harm that government has actually done. The best thing that government can do is to put you in an insurance plan that's sponsored by government and then limit your ability to sue government to treat you for all the damages it's caused. That's, unfortunately, the backbone of Obamacare and worldwide universal health care. All right, so we know now that housing, schools, most importantly, to this discussion, prisons and hospitals and everything else that you see out there, because this is not a complete list, are up for sale or for long-term lease. Doesn't matter that your taxpayer dollars built these things, that your fathers might have died in the construction of these. They can go to China. They can go to any private businessman. And then finally, state and local governments. Under Executive Order 12803, Infrastructure Privatization, state and local governments means the government of any state of the United States, the District of Columbia, any Commonwealth territory, possession of the United States, and any country, municipality, town, township, local public authority, school district, special district, intrastate district, regional and interstate governmental entities. You probably don't even know half of these exist. Council of Governments. What's that? And any agency or instrumentality of a local government and any federally recognized Indian tribe. The big fallacy with Indian land is that it belongs to the Indians, and actually that's not the case. In the actual constitutions of each state and the enabling acts for those constitutions, you see that those Indian lands are indeed owned by the federal United States. So a state and local government can be a school district. So that means that anything in the school district can be privatized. The important thing about districts is that they have a whole different set of laws and rules and regulations that can be manipulated to heck and back. So it's good to put all the assets into a district. That's why you have water districts and sewer districts. They are very easy to manipulate and hide wealth and investments within the funds that they use. So we call this sort of reimagining government. Non-profit, tax-exempt private associations that are non-governmental in nature. Well, that's the Bar Association. The association is a private association. And guess what? That's what the courts are. Courts are not governmental, they are private. And they are run by the Bar Association. The Bar Association is actually a part of the Department of Justice in the executive branch. We really don't have a third branch of government. It's sort of an illusion. Because literally the Bar Association is part of the executive branch, not the judicial. I'm not even sure the Supreme Court is part of the judicial anymore. But don't quote me on that. So there's a building, and this goes to your question. There's a building called the State Services Organization. Okay? SSO.org. Go to the About section. It says, the staff of State Services Organization, SSO, welcomes you to the Hall of the States. This is in Washington, D.C., folks. Conveniently located, just blocks, From the U.S. Capitol and Union Station, the Hall of the States is home to many Washington offices of the 50 states. Did you get that? Yeah, Utah has an office in Washington, D.C. Technically, Utah is in Washington, D.C. if we're talking about the paper aspect of it, the legal portion of it. U.S. territories and associations of the state officials also. State Services Organization, which manages the 225,000 square feet of office space that makes up the Hall of States, is proud to offer a broad range of services to more than 90 organizations. When we go to the list, which would be there, but it's not, we see Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Guam, Indiana, all the way down the list. Utah is not on that list, but I guarantee you that it's somewhere in Washington, D.C. in another building. Colleges and universities, California State University. Why in the heck would California State University have an office in Washington, D.C.? Carnegie Mellon University, Cornell University, Kent State, on down the list. But then we get to the most important part, which is associations. Okay, now remember, one of those on this list is the National Governors Association. So, your politicians form a private, non-governmental association. They all go over here and they meet in Washington, D.C. They collaborate, they conspire, they're nonpartisan, they drop their political parties. Political parties, by the way, the Democrat and Republican parties, those are non-governmental private associations. The whole of government is handled in non-governmental private associations. As long as we are members of these private associations and we retain the legal status of voter, then all this stuff is going to continue. So I'm very against any form of political party that is a registered non-governmental private association. That includes the Libertarian Party, which was actually formed by the Koch brothers, as well as the Tea Party. Ron Paul was actually one of the first leaders of the, can't remember the name of it, but it was a Koch brother venture. So I guess what I'm telling you is the thought that we still have this traditional government, this is because I talk too much. The thought that we have this traditional government left over from the days of the Constitution and all that statism and patriotism, just throw it out the window. That's not what we have anymore. Because that only exists in the heart anyway. Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, Association of State and Territorial Solid Waste Management Officials, Association of California Water Agencies, American Urological Association, American Speech Language Hearing Association. Here's where it comes. National Alliance of State and Territorial AIDS Directors, National Association of Clean Air Agencies, of Development Organizations, of Federally Impacted Schools, of Insurance Commissioners. Those are political offices. National Association of Secretaries of State, National Association of State Budget Officers, of State Auditors, Comptrollers, and Treasurers, of State Foresters, of State Retirement Administrators, those are your pension fund guys, of State Legislators, the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. You see, every single aspect of government is here, in this building. They all meet, and they all create uniform legislation like Common Core. And once they're done with that, they copyright it, and then they bring it back over to the states. And individually in each state, Common Core now is 45 states that have approved Common Core standards. And in order to do that, they must contract with a non-governmental private association called the National Governors Association, who owns the copyright. Okay? So, when you hear the term, again, rubber stamp, when Congress or legislatures of the state rubber stamp something, it literally means that they have met in private, outside of the law, created their own legislation, they bring it back, and they do this, which is why you think they're innocent. I don't know. Well, let's pass it, whatever. We think they're stupid. We've been trained through media, through reality shows, through movies and games and everything, books, that these people are stupid. And yet here they are, provably conspiring together, losing the illusion of partisanship. That's for you folks. That's to divide you folks. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So let me read you. The State Services Organization was founded in 1976 as a joint venture of the Council of State Governments, another private association, the National Conference of State Legislatures, another private association, and the National Governors Association. Our mission is to provide our tenants with superior service, The National Governors Association Center for Best Practices develops innovative solutions to today's most pressing public policy challenges. The mission of the NGA Office of Federal Relations is to ensure government's views are represented in shaping of federal policy. Policy positions reflecting governors' principles on priority issues, guide to associations work, What does this mean? It means non-governmental associations, these private associations, are lobbying groups. So this is the irony here. The governors and all the other levels of government, mayors and everything else, they meet. They conspire, they create legislation, Uniform Acts, best practices, all that, all coming from United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development Principles. They don't just go back to their states and pass the laws. They literally lobby themselves. Okay, is that hard to imagine? Can you imagine lobbying yourself? Because they're literally taking off their hat as governor, going way over here outside of any law, conspiring, and they're actually going back, putting the hat back on, and going, so what'd you bring me? Take the hat off? Well, here's Common Core standards. Put the hat on. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Take the hat off. They're lobbying themselves, folks. These are lobby organizations. It's hard to imagine that our government has got to this point, a complete takeover happening under everybody's noses. But this is reality. Who are we? National Governors Association website, straight from the mouths of the governors. Founded in 1908. The National Governors Association, NGA, is the collective voice of the nation's governors and one of Washington, D.C.'s most respected public policy organizations. A public policy organization is a lobby. Its members, straight from the website, its members are the governors, and this gave me a kick when I first read it. Its members are the governors of the 55 states. How many people knew there were 55 states? I don't know. Territories and commonwealths. NGA provides governors. Okay. NGA provides governors and their senior staff members with services that range from representing states on Capitol Hill and before the administration on key federal issues to developing and implementing innovative solutions to public policy challenges. Okay, did you get that? The membership consists of the 50 governors, and the 50 governors then provide governors and their senior staff with services. What is going on here? They're self-lobbying. I don't know if that's clear. It's just ridiculous. Mission statement from the National Governors Association website. National Governors Association, NGA, is a bipartisan organization. That means shed the artificiality of corporate, non-governmental private associations that are Democratic and Republican. A bipartisan Organization of the nation's governors. Through NGA, governors share best practices, where did we hear that? Speak with a collective voice on national policy and develop innovative solutions that improve state government and support the principles of federalism. Your governors support federalism. What does that mean? That means your governors support central government over state government. What we do, again from their website, through NGA, governors identify priority issues like Common Core and deal collectively with matters of public policy and governance at the state and national levels. Remember, governance and government are two different things. Governance is what, corporate governance is what the pension fund managers do when they proxy vote in corporations because they're shareholders. That's governance. There's a difference between government. When they are in Washington, D.C., they are part of it. When they're private associations, they're acting as governance, not government. They're taking off the hat. From the Common Core State Initiatives website, again, Common Core itself is so insignificant when you look at it for just what it is, which is standards of education. What should children be learning? Okay, it's not education in and of itself. It just says, here are the standards. This is what we should be learning. Now come on, private corporations, give me your bids. Come on, Microsoft, give me your bids. Let's privatize everything. So again, it's the hook, it's the coupling that holds the whole corporate structure together. Without Common Core, a lot of this stuff couldn't happen. A lot of this privatization couldn't happen. So now, because we have Common Core standards, we need products that meet the standards. All right? Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that organizations have to now create educational things, books, all kinds of things. Now, one of the reasons I'm here, where did she go?
What?
One of the reasons I'm here is because wasn't it you that told me about the book in the library that you were trying to fight? Mm-hmm. What was the name of that book?
The Bluest Eye.
What's that?
The Bluest Eye.
Yeah, and I looked that up, and I found out that, well, it's basically, it was lesbianism, right?
Pornography, pedophilia, rape, and incest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's in the school shelves. That's why she contacted me, because I think you got an article of mine on Common Core. And that's why we're all here today, because she tried to get that book out of the school library, and what happened?
I'm told 2 days later, after I talked to the curriculum coordinator or director at the school district, and the call I received said, we're taking the book off of the shelves until we can put it through the review.
A litmus test, yeah.
3 or 4 weeks later, I called back and talked to the librarian, and the librarian told me that she was never told to take it off the shelves, and it was still there. I got a runaround from the curriculum director.
And it's still there to this day, right? Yeah.
Probably. I haven't called back to see if they've had their review yet.
Well, I'll tell you. The Common Core website, which is part of the National Government Association, says to appropriately cite the Common Core state standards, use the following citation. Authors, National Governors Association Center for Best Practices, and the Council of Chief State School Officers. Yet another private association that meets in the SSO building in Washington, D.C. So all the chief state school officers are in on this too. The title, Common Core State Standards. Notice it's not federal standards. Publisher, National Governors Association Center for Best Practice, and the CCSSO, Washington, D.C. Publishing copyright date 2010. You know, if there's a copyright on something, that means it's not public. It means it's private. Common Core state standards are private. They are part of a private association. Copyright page, under the terms of use, provided by the National Government Association Center for Best Practices. It says this website and all content on the website, including in particular the Common Core state standards, are the property of the National Governors Association Center and the CCSSO. And National Government Association Center and CCSSO retain all right, title, and interest in and to the same. Okay, again, folks, if something's copyrighted, it's private. The dollar bill is copyrighted. It's private. You can't copy it. Public license for use of Common Core state standards. Use of Common Core state standards is permitted by the National Governor Center and CCSSO, which we'll cover here in a second, pursuant to and subject to the terms of a public license, which is available on this website. Access to this site is strictly monitored. By me going to this site and using it today in my dark presentation, by actually taking a picture of this site, I might be breaking the law, just to let you know. You might be accomplices to me breaking the law because the National Governors Center and the CCSSO reserve the right to refuse any person access to this site or any of its resources. Okay? That means, again, that in order to use these things, you have to get permission of a private, non-governmental association. How many times can I say that? No one's thrown up yet, so I guess you're not angry enough yet. From the Council of Chief State School Officers, talking about Common Core standards, created the Network for Transforming Educator Preparation, NTEP, to support states ready to take action in key policy areas to ensure all educators are ready on the first day of their career to prepare students for college, work, and life. Who are we? Council of Chief State School Officers is a nonpartisan, nationwide, nonprofit organization of public officials who head departments of elementary and secondary education in the states, etc. Oh, actually, no. Secondary education in the states, the District of Columbia, the Department of Defense Education, the entire military, the FBI, the CIA is all under Common Core standards, and 5 U.S. extra state jurisdictions. Provides leadership, advocacy, and technical assistance on major educational issues. The Council seeks member consensus on major educational issues and expresses their views to civic and professional organizations, federal agencies, Congress, and the public. More Agenda 21. I want to read you a list of partners. Okay, these are listed as CCSSO corporate partners. What is that? Public-private partnerships. Microsoft. U.S. Partners in Learning. Microsoft believes that every student has the right to a great education. It also believes in vaccinating all of Africa and sterilizing it. Our mission is simple, albeit grand, to help students and educators through the world realize their full potential. What it really wants to do is enter into a public-private partnership and sell computers. Because if every kid in the nation, all, 100 million of them, has a Microsoft computer, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And they can charge more for it because it's paid for by the taxpayers. It's wonderful. You can just create more debt and buy all the computers for kids. Promethean Company helps make educational transformation by leveraging technology to provide data-driven, evidence-based instructional improvement systems. Math, science, geometry. That's what it used to be. But now we leverage technology to provide data-driven, evidence-based instructional improvement systems.
Clint, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Microsoft is going to get in the business of selling computers. Somebody has to rewrite the history lessons of this country. What worries me throughout the years of my life is that I'm seeing more now is saying 20 or 30 years, one generation of kids, they can rewrite the history as to what it never was. The original history's gone. They made it to be what they wanted to be. The kids know nothing. They go in the military. The whole damn country is took over by a bunch of people that don't know nothing where
Well,
this nation come from.
That's the important part about having Common Core in the military, is because they want our kids to grow up as peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers. See, to keep the peace around the rest of the world, to ensure that our global society stays how it is, that everybody's equal, no one gets ahead, except, of course, the people who do, the elite, if you will. Yeah, you're witnessing history being changed. There was just a movie called Lincoln that came out, completely inaccurate about most things. You have television shows. You have Sleepy Hollow out right now, completely rewriting the history of Masonry, making them out to look like good guys. You have entire history that can happen from one day to the next. They already did a movie about killing Osama bin Laden. They already did a movie about history that happened yesterday. They're rewriting history as it happens.
Right. So they're trying to buy books from good authors that write the history of this nation. But someday I'm going to be dead. Maybe somebody will get these books and read them and say, hey, the country is screwed up. We got to do something.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that you guys will stay in contact and pass this video. I hope that I'm impressing you enough to see that this information that I'm telling you right now needs to get out, because this is true history. This is history that's happening right now. This is the real, this is like looking into a clock or a watch and seeing all the cogs work. Okay, that's what we're looking at, right? This is reality, and it's not pretty. And unless we do something together mutually and share this, we're screwed, literally. I have to give respect also to the older generations. I am probably one of the last generations that will be doing what I'm doing right now,
right.
Sacrificing my career. I used to be a Hollywood sound editor. I was going to make 6 figures before I quit. I gave that up to make free documentaries because I started seeing all this. Okay, there's not very many of me
right.
out there, and that's what you're saying.
Right,
and
exactly.
After my generation,
it's gone.
yeah, I mean that's what Common Core is designed to do. That's why this is so important, and that's why getting kids into the social media. Social media is kind of like a petition. We all go and we sign petitions, begging on one knee. Please, politicians, change this, do that. A petition has absolutely no legal weight whatsoever. You send an email, you send a letter, no legal weight whatever. The only way you can do anything to government is to sue it. But nobody knows that, and nobody has the wherewithal to do it. So, to get people into the social media, on the internet, in the entertainment realm, everybody's going to focus their efforts in here. But this doesn't really exist. It's not real.
Right.
The whole world, this whole corporate, virtual world, it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's beautiful. The trees look real. The streams look real. The creatures, the monsters, the vampires, the demons, they all sound and look real. That's what I used to do as a sound designer. Meanwhile, the world is falling apart. Society is falling apart. They want kids to grow up with computers.
Yeah, I know. I had the kids over at their house for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Here they are. I don't think they even talk to one another. They're crying out loud.
Or you, yeah. It's
what do you know? But
well, they'll probably come out with virtual parents eventually.
Yeah. Did the computer give you a hug? No.
Exactly.
Jeez.
All right. So some other corporate partners: School Improvement Network, founded in 1991 by teachers. A private association, School Improvement Network provides the most innovative, on-demand, comprehensive, research-based school improvement resources anytime, mostly virtual or digital, like Common Core 360 is one of them. Amplify, Apple Computers, integrated the personal computer revolution. The corporations are bidding against each other to get government contracts. All right, Intel Corporation. Of course, you can't have a computer without a motherboard, microchips. K-12 is a technology-based education company. Have you ever heard of an education company? These things didn't exist before the privatization of the education system. No one in their right mind would build an education company to build products for a for-profit education system that's traded on the stock market. These are all things that have been coming around through the pipeline since privatization started. Metametrics. Listen to this. A privately held educational measurement company develops scientifically based measures of student achievement that link assessment with instruction. Foster better educational practices, improve learning by matching students with materials that meet and challenge their abilities. Listen to this word. I don't even think I've ever heard of it. The company's team of psychometricians developed a Lexile framework for reading, Lexile.com. I mean, a quantile framework for mathematics, and it just goes on, metametrics. What is a psychometrician? Does anybody in here know?
Yeah, somebody to screw with your brain.
Well, psycho, yeah. Scholastic, most trusted name in learning, has now partnered with and is producing stuff in Common Core. Personally, I don't trust them anymore. Texas Instruments, another competitive bidder. Calculators, every kid should have a calculator. But they have a Texas Instruments Educational and Productivity Solutions. You see, they're creating sub-corporations strictly based on education to create products, for-profit products that taxpayers pay for the Common Core system. International Business Machine Corporation, what is that? IBM. IBM Global Education, that's their name. Collaborates with schools, districts, and state departments of education to create innovative business and technology solutions. Now, a lot of this stuff has nothing to do with education. We're going to talk about a really important corporation called Core, which is based in India. A lot of this stuff is tracking and IT. So, in other words, I'll save it for Core, because what Core is doing is taking over staffing of schools. See, Common Core is not just allowing students to be trapped in the same education where we go. The important part about the military is that the military child, no matter where he's stationed, where your parents are stationed, the military child can transfer 9 times as the average expectancy for transfers for military parents. And no matter where that child goes, he's going to get the same exact standard of education. He's going to join the same dumbed-down kids anywhere he goes, including internationally. And if you can't get it internationally, you do it on the computer, called distance learning. Distance learning is a product. Everything is capitalized now. All these words and terms, they're products. They're proper nouns. They're something for sale to government. True North Logic is the leading provider of comprehensive human capital management systems. Okay, that's no different than cattle management if you're a farmer. Okay, horse management of the horse populations, where they're getting rid of 90% of the mating capacity. Okay, human capital management is a horrible, horrible, horrible word. It takes the human out of the equation and makes commodities as capital. Capital being something worth a value. Okay, we are all financial instruments, each and every one of us. Every one of us creates taxpayer money and dozens of other things that are worth a value. Battelle for Kids, Cisco. Let's see. I think that's about it for partners that they list there anyway. All right. So now, remember hours ago we talked about treaties and that the federal government cannot necessarily alter the form of government as far as the Constitution. Why is it so important to attack the state level? Well, if you get Common Core passed in all 50 or 55 states, then at that point, to change the federal law would not alter anything in the state. So at that point, once you get uniform laws passed in all 50 states, a good example of that is the Uniform Commercial Code. Was a uniform act written by attorneys, of course. So all states, 50 states, have the same uniform code. It might as well be a federal or central law. If you get all 50 states to accept Common Core, there's still a few holdouts, then you have this Senate bill, federal Senate bill, House bill, Senate bill, S1094. Grassroots organization named Education Freedom Committee found this. It's called Strengthening America's Schools Act of 2013. Refers to the bill as a 1,200-page regulatory tsunami on local school systems, sort of like the healthcare bill. S1094 puts approximately 150 new reporting requirements on states relating to teacher evaluations, learning goals, curriculum standards, standardized testing, and annual reporting. Also continues the war on local schools through forced implementation of Common Core standards. If all the local communities and states have already accepted Common Core standards, then who's going to complain about a federal bill that forces the standards? Unless we stop the last few states who are holding out on this from accepting this, then there is nothing to stop a federally mandated bill that literally alters the Constitution, because everybody agrees it's okay. You've got the consensus of the states. Doesn't matter anymore. They can do whatever they want at that point. That's the importance of attacking the states and the local governments. Long-standing line of defense by Common Core advocates is that the whole thing is voluntary for the states to participate. With the passage of this bill, participation and implementation of Common Core standards will be required of all states. So, yeah. The title of the bill, by the way, is a bill to amend Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 and for other purposes. Now we go back to the Council of Chief State School Officers, the people who created Common Core in the first place, and this is one of their news briefs from their own websites. Okay, remember, what did we just read? The act that they're trying to amend is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Strengthening America's Schools. Remember, Council of Chief State School Officers is a lobby group that lobbies themselves. So what does it say? The U.S. Department of Education's decision to approve the California District Core Waiver, da-da-da-da-da. And the last sentence it says, ultimately, this decision highlights the critical need for Congress to act swiftly to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So now you see that the very people who created Common Core are lobbying Congress to pass their own Common Core standards using some created, manufactured problem reaction solution, using that to justify passing a federal law that says Common Core standards are possible. So you understand, again, go to Washington, D.C., create the law, come back, lobby yourselves, and now they're at the point where they're lobbying Congress itself, which is really ridiculous when you think about it, because it's basically organized crime. Again, they're not stupid. This is the goal all along, because you can't pass it federally unless you pass it on the state level first. It's really brilliant when you think about it. I mean, I'm sure that they have think tanks where hundreds and hundreds of people just sit around all day and think of ways to completely subvert anything this country stands for, or used to stand for. So that brings us to the public-private partnership model and CORE. Core Education and Consulting Solutions. Obviously, it's in the name, CORE. CORE is capitalized. This is a company based in India with headquarters. Its financial report is actually in English, but it's done in Indian, what is it? I want to say rupees.
Rupees.
Rubles?
Rupees, R-U-P-E.
Rupees, that's it. So it's definitely an Indian corporation. But they have subsidiaries in the United States. I know one's in Atlanta, I think one's in New York. About core education and consulting solutions, working with schools, districts, and statewide agencies, Core ECS integrates and optimizes formative assessment solutions, technology infrastructure, management applications, special education compliance, outsourced staffing solutions, and technical career education programs. Where innovation is required to advance education in the United States, Core ECS currently touches the lives of over 2,500,000 learners and 150,000 educators across the country. Remember, this is a corporation headquartered in India. When I pulled up the shareholder report for this company, I found that it was all owned by private interests and foreign governments, United States included. So because it's in India doesn't mean that it's necessarily only supporting or... This is how government works. They do offshore corporations all the time and then have them infiltrate in. But you have to have Common Core standards to let them. That's the thing. So I'm going to read straight from their annual financial report. And this is like reading from an Orwell novel. I mean, it's like catching a villain monologuing on how he's going to just completely change the world with his evil plan. Core India annual financial report. The global agenda of the 21st century. Agenda 21. Global agenda of the 21st century is set around economy and trade, with manufacturing shifting from the west to the east. Have you noticed all your corporations disappearing, going over to China, going over to India? When you call about your cell phone your smartphone being broken, who do you get? Hello, may I help you? It's not an American. It's a person in India or China or Mexico. That's why I say they're not very smart. And, you see, America knows, the government knows, again, that this is the global plan to transfer all the wealth and corporate structure and property value as a commodity over to the rest of the world. So, of course, government's going to create corporations in the rest of the world to manage it all. Going back to the report, in order to sustain their economic growth, developed as well as developing economies need to intensify their human capital formation. Not surprising then, nations across the world are increasingly investing in education for continued development of their human capital. Okay, when a government refers to you, the people, as human capital, it's not referring to you as a living human being. It's referring to you in some actuarial report that says how much money you're going to make according to which education path you take. You're a commodity. Okay? Capital can never be assigned to human life or it's over. That's slavery. It's commerce in souls, if you will. The responsibility to shape young minds and prepare them for a new world rests on education. And again, education is capitalized. We're not talking about the actual act of educating children. We're talking about the for-profit industry on the stock market called education. Remember, we're not talking about the natural aspect of actually educating people. We're talking about a business. Quote, the world needs to renounce some age-old practices in its education system and adopt a futuristic pedagogy, reinventing their education system in line with the unfolding realities of the 21st century. Those realities, Agenda 21. CORE is uniquely poised to help nations enhance the productive capabilities of their future workforce and create immense value for all stakeholders over the coming decades. Immense value for stakeholders. This is all this is a business. Help nations enhance the productive capabilities of their future workforce? What does that mean? It's workforce education. It's not training people how to think or how to analyze or the trivium your grammar, your logic, your rhetoric, the classic liberal arts. No. It's training you how to be a good citizen of the world and work. Let me read you from Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. This is one of the most true predictions I've ever heard. A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. They have smartphones. To make them love it is the task assigned in present-day totalitarian states to ministers of propaganda, newspaper editors, and school teachers. Most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. Now, like the guy was talking about the Matrix, the truth of the matter is there's only one revolution, and that's in here. If we don't get people to start coming back in here and out of this digital realm and out of this corporate structure, this artificiality, then we're going to fall right into this model that was set up. And Aldous Huxley was one of the most instrumental people in setting this whole thing up from the beginning. Very important part of government. I also want to read you the definition, and you're going to laugh at this if you're not asleep. The word bureaucrat. Now, we said that they're lobbying themselves, they're coming back, and they're rubber stamping. What is a bureaucrat? According to Random House Dictionary, it's an official who works by fixed routine without exercising intelligent judgment. So your council members, half of them that have no idea what Agenda 21, half of them don't know what their own financial statements say. I'm voting with him. Well, it turns out he's the representative from the United Nations Sustainable Development. He makes sense. He somehow forms a consensus, and I don't understand how he does it. I'm going with him. He's a bureaucrat. Congress is a bureaucrat. They're rubber stamping their own legislation. Bureaucracy. What is a bureaucracy? According to Bouvier's Law Dictionary of 1856, a bureaucracy is the abuse of official influence in the affairs of government, i.e. corruption. Well, do we have a bureaucracy? Show of hands. This word has lately been adopted to signify that those persons who are employed in bureaus, agencies, if you will, and abuse their authority by intrigue to promote their own benefit or that of friends rather than the public good. That was from 1856, folks. They have perfected that definition to a T. Page 53 of the core report. Annual financial report. Most important document you can get on any corporation. It's all out there available for you. Page 53. Core India currently touches the lives of over 20 million students, spread over 54,000 schools across the United States, advancing education through an integrated mosaic of innovative solutions. Currently, approximately 86% of the consolidated revenues are generated from the U.S. business. And during the year under review, Core Education and Consulting Services, one of our main wholly owned subsidiaries in the United States, registered a 21.42 increase in profit after tax. To US dollars, it equaled 20.58 million. In India, it's 1 billion rupees. So 86% of a corporation in India's profits are coming from the United States. Did you catch that? Yeah. Page 47, Core provides software solutions for its customers, including governments, operating in industries such as human resources, manufacturing, banking, financial services, supply chain management, and data warehousing. It typically meets with the customer to discuss a solution required and then customize the solution to provide the customer with support for the product on a continuing basis. Remember, we're talking about education. The company's consultants specialize in 15 sectors, including central government, policing and criminal justice, local government, defense, transport, and finance. When we're talking about core, the word core, not Common Core. Common Core is just the education aspect of it. When we're talking about the word core, you're going to see it repeated all over the place. It has everything to do with business. It can be any industry whatsoever that core will be a part of. And the common aspect of it is basically the uniformity of law. Here's some public-private partnerships that CORE is involved with. CORE was named Dell Partner of the Year. Dell Computers, again, wishing to get their computers in using Microsoft software and Intel processors. Partner of the Year for 2013. Partners with Samsung. Let's see. White River USD. That's White River Unified School District. Okay, this is where the public-private partnership happens. The Core Advanced Technologies Group, Core ATG, has partnered with White River Unified School District to provide a complete technology solution for the district's new IT infrastructure initiatives. A variety of laptops, tablets, and systems management solutions were selected after a rigorous evaluation process that included da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. Okay, so the Core came in and took over the school district in its IT and its computerized stuff. Bennington chooses Kuno over the iPad, another competition. Bennington Technology. Strategic staffing solution for Orbridge Academy. It's another school. Now, when it says strategic staffing, well, we'll get to that. Core ACS to deliver assessments in St. Croix, which is outside the United States. Core ACS among the first offering Intel Core vPro, third generation Intel Core processors. It just goes on and on and on. Consulting and staffing receives Award of Excellence. Core to provide IT staff augmentation for the whole state of Ohio. Corporation in India now providing consulting and staffing. Now, when we're talking about staffing, I want you to get this through your heads. We're talking about staffing of teachers. Staffing of teachers. Now, if you hire out a company to do the hiring for you of your teachers, and you wash your hands of it, so now you have a company that's based on Common Core standards hiring the teachers for the entire state or district. Well, guess what? What a wonderful way to ensure that the teachers that you hire, like you said, are Common Core standard ready. They're not going to teach what Aldous Huxley was. They're not going to teach a lot of history that we learned when we grew up. I can't say that my history books were that good. But if you control the hiring of teachers, then you control the information that's getting to students. Perfect example of what you were talking about. History will be demolished because it is not up to Common Core standards. Simple as that. If you control teachers, you control children. Last but not least, just so you know, Obama was very happy and highlighted Georgia's pre-K system powered by Core India. He made the trip to Georgia to do a photo op, of course, and said that their core this is Core Corporation India, their pre-K program is a model for creating statewide universal pre-K for children. Core provides the software backbone for Pre-K Matters, that is a product, Pre-K Matters, that enables administrators to maintain and assess pre-K providers. A lot of this, the Core does, besides the staffing, is data collection, IT, and all of that stuff. So it's keeping track of everything your child does and guiding his education to the proper place. Is he going to be a laborer? Is he going to be a phone operator? Is he going to be, all these, is he going to be taking care of something in the computer world? What's he going to do? Core has something that it calls workforce education. That's basically the model of education at this point. It used to be how to think and not what to think. Now it's what to think, and now it's becoming workforce education. I just want to read you a few quotes before we get to there. John D. Rockefeller, who we discussed earlier, the Rockefeller Foundation, he said he created the General Education Board, or GEB, in 1903 to dispense Rockefeller funds to education. Not ironically, that's very close to when the National Governors Association was created, so you can see the conspiracy there, if you will. I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. That's it, that's the quote. I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. Imagine a guy with his hands in the purse strings of most of the financial aspects of America saying, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. It's just amazing. H.L. Mencken says, the aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. I would probably change this quote, and I would say, to breed and trade a common core standardized citizenry. Core India. Core India is the perfect example of a public-private partnership. It is in a contract with government to provide services. That is what a public-private partnership is. It's a lease agreement. You take over the function of government. Taxpayers are still funding it. Taxpayers will fix the buildings that you destroy or, fix the cracks in the wall, but you're going to run it and profit from it. In order to make students, this is from their financial report again, in order to make students industry ready, that's what school is for now. In order to make students industry ready, educational institutes must use contemporary tools to bridge the gap. CORE, as in CORE ECS, offers best-in-class employability-linked vocational training in areas like hospitality and housekeeping, spa, healthcare and wellness, data entry operations, repetitive motions. Actually, they have special education for that. For autistic children, they love the autistic children because they can do repetitive actions all day and never complain. One of the biggest emerging markets in the education field is special needs specifically for autism kids. If they could just perfect autism, you have a gold mine. You have an entire workforce you can pay very little money to. You can plan their whole lives out because they need caretaking, basically.
Got a question.
Sure.
When you said perfecting autism, and then you talk about drugs with mercury in them, I'm just guessing, could they be actually drugging down kids to have autism to fill this program?
We did a seminar on this actually with it was with Rima LeBeau, whose husband is Major General Stubblebine. Mm-hmm. If you ever heard of The Men Who Stare at Goats, he was the general in that actually, and he's actually fantastic guy to talk to, and he comes out right, tells you how it is. We did a seminar on this, and I covered CORE, the aspect of CORE that deals with special education technologies. Mm-hmm. And when you go to the law of the United States, it's very important to have these laws on the books, and they're federal laws. It says that no child can be left behind. What that really means is that every child needs a computer. Every child must be educated. Every child must become part of the education structure. That way, taxpayer money, as an asset, can be forced into the system and given to private corporations. Now, if government is the main shareholder in both domestically and internationally the corporations that make vaccines, then the best way to profit off that investment is to force vaccines. So that's all I'll say. I've done extensive research. If you go to thecorporationnation.com, you can watch a 2.5-hour movie that I made called Lethal Injection, the story of vaccination. That'll tell you a lot about what you're talking about. I spent years researching vaccines just because I wanted to understand them myself, and it seemed to be the most misunderstood thing there was. And let me just say, because I believe I'm in a room of good Christian people here, the way that they grow vaccines, the last half hour of my movie is dedicated to this. They grow it on animal substrates, cell substrates, proteins, blood of cows, that kind of thing. But they also grow it on human aborted fetal tissue. So when you inject a vaccine into your body, especially the flu vaccine, which is so common, you will be getting the protein and DNA structures from either animals or from aborted fetal tissue. And if this is indeed a room of good Christians, that should be enough to at least make you read the ingredients list, if not to have a moral, religious exemption from vaccines. Just wanted to throw that out there because when I found that out, it changed my whole concept of the whole industry. It made me realize how how incredibly evil it actually is. So, to continue on the list, CORE, this is funny. CORE offers best-in-class employability-linked vocational training in areas like hospitality and housekeeping, spa, healthcare and wellness, data entry operations, IT, which is, again, in the computer realm. It doesn't really help anybody, technically. It doesn't do anything. It's not natural. Basic accounting and construction. These are in education, you understand. CORE follows the source, train, place model by working closely with industry and government organizations. Of course, that's private associations it's talking about. It plans to expand into automobile, retail, travel, and tourism. Now, in the Brave New World, if anybody's ever read that or seen the movies that were made out of it, what were they training the kids to do? Have sex, watch cartoons, have fun, don't worry about anything. Do, as a beta or a delta or whatever it was, do your job, punch your numbers, and then afterwards we'll all go dance and have, we'll frolic in the mist. That's basically the model of Brave New World. And that's basically what this is telling you, that we're going to train students to be work ready for industries in spa and healthcare. Think about it. CORE partnered with the East Valley Institute of Technology, a U.S.-based institute recognized for excellence in career and technological education. Page 13 of the report says a continuous assessment of students' assimilation of the remember I don't know if anybody's a Star Trek fan, but there's the Borg assimilating into the Borg collective. A continuous assessment of students' assimilation of the concepts taught is an important step of overall education system. These solutions help teachers, schools, and administrators to scientifically assess their students and therefore design their individual learning paths. They keep a chart and record of your child. All of his faults, all of his good parts, how smart he is, and that's where they guide your child, to spa and healthcare or to construction or whatever. Page 14, CORE assists government agencies globally to monitor, process, and evaluate complex information across the state. Okay, that's data collection. CORE provides innovative educational solutions for governments across the globe to help them address key global education challenges like accessibility and inclusion. Increasing employability, enhancing learning experience and literacy. Now, a friend over here brought up a really good point. He says, as a manager of a healthcare company, he says he has to fire kids that are just graduating from college because the school system decided, the entire school system globally, decided that cursive writing was no longer acceptable. They no longer teach the classic style of cursive writing. It's sort of an art form, really. And so if anybody's ever seen a doctor's scribble, they even call it a doctor's, a doctor's, it's barely legible as it is. But the fact that it's in cursive, he actually said that he had to fire people because they couldn't read cursive. Can you imagine that? I mean, that's like being half illiterate. So this is what's happening, and now kids are only writing in just, forgive me, I can't think of the name of it, straight letters.
Block letters.
Yeah, block letters. It's just amazing. So whether it is helping North Carolina to manage its special education needs, or automating Mozambique's examination management system, or tracking of 8 million children in Jakarta, CORE strives to enlighten minds and nations globally. Isn't that nice? National PTA. Now, in order to have this thing accepted, you have to also propagandize to the parents. You have to use the Delphi technique and Agenda 21 in these types of groups. So you have about the National PTA. Comprises millions of families, students, teachers, administrators, and businesses, and community leaders devoted to the educational success of children. Yeah. And the promotion of parent involvement in schools. Now, here's the important part. PTA is a registered 501c3 nonprofit association, like everyone else, that prides itself on being a powerful voice for all children. Children is one of the greatest political weapons ever conceived, pun intended. A relevant resource for families and communities, and a strong advocate for public education. Membership in PTA is open to anyone who wants to be involved and make a difference for education, health, and welfare of children. Go to the PTA website, here's what it says. Common Core State Standards Initiative. National PTA is uniquely positioned to be an influential and credible voice in advancing the Common Core State Standards. CCSSI is a joint effort led by the National Government Association. Parents want to feel involved with their children. They should be sitting in the school classrooms is what they should be doing. I keep doing that. Parents should take an active role, not a passive role. A passive role is to go to a PTA meeting where a bunch of Agenda 21 trained, sustainable development trained people are going to tell the parents everything's okay. This Common Core is great, we love it. Look, it's teaching your children this and this and this. And the same thing is being taught way over here. Okay, this is the danger of having private associations in charge of, as an organization, because you give all your power to it. You don't go take the initiative to sit in your child's class. You don't take the initiative to go actually talk to the teacher anytime you want to. Instead, you go sit in a meeting that's organized to confuse and obfuscate the truth of what this is. And PTA is a major supporter of Common Core standards. Period. End of story. National PTA, this is from its website, PTA supports nationally agreed upon voluntary standards, voluntary, through consensus, if they are derived by consent, there you go. If they are derived by consensus at the state and local levels. Parents must be involved in this process. That's because they're garnering your consent for all of this. They want you in the process. They're not going to listen to anything you say because it's already a done deal.